4th, 2023. Introductions, please.
Nelson Gill, member.
John DeLeo, Chair.
Rick Lyles, Vice Chair.
Mike Hangy, alternate.
Who will be voting
Who
tonight?
will be voting tonight?
Patrick Lyons, still alternate. We will be voting tonight.
Staff introductions, please.
Matt Williams, City Planner.
Lori Roberts, Code Enforcement.
Thomas Cannon, Fire Inspector.
Adoption of minutes from the September 6th, 2023 regular meeting.
Before we dive into that,
Yep.
can we do the vote to remove the preliminary plan for phase two? Just get the agenda updated?
So it's
We need to vote for
eliminate
that.
item 4.
Because it happened after we posted the.
Okay. And then I just figured we were going to say we're not doing that, but if you want to vote for it, we'll
You
do
should
it.
vote to
Okay.
officially remove it.
Want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we delete agenda item number 4.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Item number 3? Nope, you didn't do the adoption of minutes. Okay, so,
Now you're all confused.
yeah, I know.
Sorry.
Are there any additions, deletions to the minutes?
Move that the minutes from the last meeting be adopted.
Second.
All in favor? Now I'll go through. Final plan review of major subdivision, Title 59, Franklin for applicant Corey, could you pronounce your last name again?
Weegend?
Weegan. And owner 59 Franklin LLC. The proposal is to convert an existing restaurant into 4 residential units. The subject property is approximately 0.27 acre lot located at 59 Franklin Street, tax map 134, lot 33 in the downtown zoning district. Turn it over to Corey.
Okay, first, could I offer updated water and sewer capacity letters received after the final submission?
Yep.
Well, just vote to, you have to vote to accept the evidence that came in after the packet was turned.
We need a motion for that?
Yeah.
So move that we accept this last minute information.
I would specify, to vote to accept the letters from city staff regarding capacity for water and wastewater.
That too.
Seconded.
All in favor? Okay.
While we're making motions, and while he's just coming back
Sorry, I
and
only
forth.
had 3 copies here printed out.
That's okay.
I want to give
I
one,
don't
Matt,
get
do
one.
you have it? A
I'll give
copy?
one.
I've seen them, but
Yeah, you've seen it. Okay.
At the last meeting, we decided to call this the preliminary plan review of a subdivision, blah, 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 for new and existing. And this guy here seems to be the old language, is that right or wrong, or?
It is because, so, yeah, it is, I think Elizabeth just copy and pasted from the original last time, so,
So what's in the minutes is the right title,
yeah.
and this is the wrong
Would you
title?
like to make a motion to amend?
No. No, but when we make the motions in the end, we should reference,
you're right.
reference
That's for-
the real
yeah.
title. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay with you?
Yeah.
That's what I would propose.
Okay.
Son of a gun.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so we made the updated site plans and the floor plans per the discussions. We entered in a trip generation study, which shows a significant decrease in trip generation. Other than that, I think it remains relatively unchanged. It originally did say 4 dwelling units, which is 3 now with that front space being reserved for possible later development when the dwelling unit definition may change in January to less than 500 square feet. Otherwise, I think substantially it's fairly similar to what we presented last time. If there are any outstanding questions.
So the reduction from 4 to 3 is an answer to, or answers the TRT question, is that correct?
Yes.
And under revised site plan, blah, blah, blah. Right, okay.
I just wonder, on the, well, the site plan concerning the parking and where the snow storage area is. Just kind of curious on the, has staff measured the parking lot to make sure that 5 parking places fit in each end of that?
I mean, going off of the measurements on the survey, it would have about 20 feet per parking space, which exceeds what we require. But I did not go to the site and measure the parking lot.
I mean, the width is fine.
Yep, we require, I think, 18 feet wide. And so if there's like about 20 feet per parking space, it'd be larger.
But I mean, not length, I'm talking about width.
Guess that wouldn't be.
They're supposed to be 9 feet minimum.
9 feet.
So that would be 45 feet for the 5 of them.
Right,
48
sorry,
feet
I was looking at the
total.
wrong number, yeah. So the 48 feet, so yeah, there'd be over, or about,
Okay,
whatever 48 divided by 5 is. So it's like over 9 feet, because they have 45 divided by 5 would be 9, so.
Good
Yeah.
dividing.
We're on it.
I mean, considering this project, I guess I'm more concerned if something else comes down the pipe as to whether there's gonna be enough room in there for on-site parking and snow storage. But that may be for phase 2.
Yeah, I mean, so, I think if he does move forward, putting new storage or new, facilities into the south wing, it's worth a discussion just to make sure that, the snow storage can be handled properly, and parking can still be maintained for the number of dwelling units there. But I know you also, it's probably a conversation for phase 2, but, we can talk about it a little bit now if you want.
I guess we can. My understanding is that as long as we don't expand square footage, we're exempt from parking restrictions.
Let's say that, so the American, I know you have spaces down below, is the American, are those gonna be reserved for the office spaces down there, or?
Yeah, they don't use this parking lot at all. I know they use the back portion that's the mashup of city lot and all the private lots that kind of butt together. But as far as I know, they're using that space and their other building
Right.
parking down there.
But so like if you needed to, you could reserve those spots spots you own for these dwelling units, and the American can just park in this free city parking anyway that's right there. Right?
I guess partially that's my understanding what they've been doing historically, yes.
So there are additional parking spaces that could be applied to the dwelling units down the line.
And I guess I would have to turn to fire because he has requests for TRT waivers, basically concerning fire protection, and I guess where do we stand with all that?
So, I have spoken with the sprinkler company that he's going to be using to modify his sprinkler system. They have sent a letter verifying that there's adequate water supply, the system is in working order, and that at a later date, once they're able to design the actual system, once he has drawn up where he's going to have his walls and partitions and stuff like that, they're going to submit set plans to me, and as well as the new fire alarm system plan to encompass phase 1, which will also probably be phase 2 when that comes around as well.
It kind of sounds like, the plans for the sprinkler system are not gonna take, if this plan is approved tonight, that part of it actually is not gonna take place prior to our approval tonight.
No. Usually doesn't.
So, question concerning that. Are you planning on doing any sprinkler work on phase 1?
Yes, that's part of his requirement, the conversion
Right.
to
So
residential
in my
dwellings.
fire letter, it says that before he can pull permits or do anything, I need to have a actual copy to review of the sprinkler and the fire alarm system for the updates before we move forward with any of the life safety or allowing any occupancy of the building.
Okay, I understand that, but I mean, is there going to be sprinkler work done in phase one?
Yes,
And what is that that's going to be done?
moving the sprinkler heads so they're not obstructed by the walls.
Okay. So I have a concern, and I'm not sure if you've picked up on it. In your level 2, apartment A1A, okay, there needs to be a sprinkler head in that corridor.
There will be. That was the discussion that we discussed with Sprinklers Inc. was that the stairwell has to be protected.
That doesn't look like a stairwell to me. I think that's a corridor, is it not?
No, it's a stairwell. You're talking on the right side when you come in.
Apartment 1A, isn't that a part of the restaurant?
Nope, that's above it.
One A
Yeah,
is-
apartment, unit 1A on there. Yeah, you're looking at level 2, correct?
Correct.
so
Yes,
level
that's
two.
all currently was what the restaurant was.
Is the restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you're actually creating is a dead-end corridor right now for them to exit into? You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Which one are you?
I'm looking at level 2,
So you mean, are you saying apartment 2A?
no, 1A.
1A.
This one
1A.
Yeah. okay.
1A exits into a
A hallway.
corridor.
Yeah,
Okay?
hallway.
An unsprinkled corridor, the dead-end travel distance is 25 feet.
Mhm.
Okay? So,
Let me clarify, the building is already completely sprinkled everywhere.
is that corridor sprinkled?
That's currently a room that's larger than that, and yes, there are sprinklers in every covered space in this facility already.
Okay, so that is.
That would be part of potentially when he looks at the plan and decides where the heads need to be added.
Okay. All right,
Right,
okay.
because NFPA 101 in chapter 30 gives them that right to, if they have sprinkled through that corridor, they can have a single means of egress out.
That is correct, and I understand that, but what I'm saying, if there wasn't any sprinklers in there,
Right,
then you'd have to have two means out that way.
yes, and that's what
Okay.
the discussion was, is once we start moving heads and updating the sprinkler heads, that's what the discussion was, what
Okay.
I would allow or not allow.
Okay.
I just want to comment, have you written a letter? I mean, normally,
Yep.
we have a letter before us.
I think it's my fault again when I was rushing to do it because Elizabeth was sick. So I think I forgot to print the fire letter.
I'm never swearing, yeah.
Basically, the fire letter stated that, we needed address on the building, we need numbering on the units themselves, and then as well as updated sprinkler plans, updated fire alarm system, potential Knox box, and then basically I have the other letter from the sprinkler company saying that the flow requirements for the building is adequate for what they're looking to do for work.
But I will send you the fire letter digitally so that you can see that it exists.
Could I get a copy of that also?
Yeah.
So, Tom, the letter basically covers the 5 bullets that we see on the TRT.
Correct.
That's,
Now, if we were to approve it tonight, would we want to make a condition of approval regarding that, or is that kind of that's part of your process anyways?
I mean, you can, because again, I'll send it to you tomorrow, so it'll be achieved pretty easily and quickly.
Are we talking about the fire letter, or are we talking about the?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I'm, not the fire letter.
Oh.
Yeah, the
The
sprinklers.
sprinkling
Mhm.
process that's been discussed here tonight. I guess my question is, obviously, we want the building to be properly sprinkled, which it is, other than
Correct.
fitting of the heads.
Yep.
We don't have that plan as part of our materials here.
I don't think you need to,
Yeah.
because we do have a letter from Sprinklers Incorporated, basically stating that they are gonna be the ones doing the work,
Yeah.
and that they've already basically assured that there is adequate coverage there, and that once they are able to secure, to start actually designing the system, they'll send me a copy for review.
Yeah, and you're not gonna issue any occupancy permits anyways
Correct.
until that work's all done and you're satisfied.
Yeah.
So we don't need it. I was just asking the question, but
Yeah.
I think unless you guys think otherwise, I don't think it's necessary.
Historically, we have on other occasions. My comment was gonna be a little bit different. If we don't need the inclusion in the motion, then that's fine. But the language here, need to provide new and updated fire sprinkler plans and fire alarm system plans. My suggestion was gonna be that meet the fire inspector standards, not just provide the plans, but
Yeah.
have plans that are acceptable.
Yeah.
But if we don't need it, we don't need
I
it.
mean, it doesn't hurt to put it in the language, just to put it out there, because it's a topic of discussion tonight. You don't have the paperwork in front of you, so we can, in case somebody has a question upon that, you covered it. It's not me, Mike, I promise.
I don't feel that being more explicit is harmful here. There's no additional burden. I mean, we're not asking
Yeah.
for anything. It isn't already planned to be delivered, so we can just mention it in the motion.
And things like the occupancy permit or whatever
Right.
are contingent on those things being there in place anyway, right?
Yeah. I think we've got a board member saying, why don't we add it as a condition? I don't see any reason not to, so we can.
Did you want to add it as a condition?
I think that matches precedent with what we've
I
done in
think
the
so.
past in similar situations.
And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Even though this looks as though it's a renovation, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you've got more than 50% of this building that's being renovated, correct?
No.
No.
It's
No?
like 48% or something like
The
that.
48% includes the entire south
You're talking
wing.
2%.
Well,
Unfortunately.
that triggers
I
certain
stand
things, so.
corrected. If it's more than 50%, and we find out that it's more than 50%, then there's an issue, because now it becomes change of use, but actually it's a change of use anyway, and it
Mhm.
comes under new construction.
Yeah, Lori and I think, went through
There
that.
was a very lengthy
48%.
investigation
Or the
to get
88.
to 48%.
Okay. All right. So I stand corrected. For 2%.
There was wording too, Harrington Salisbury is involved somehow to,
I had a phone conversation with them, like, just to confirm that they still stand by the previous survey. And then I think they helped Corey kind of print some of these plans.
Yeah, they printed the full-size copy for us, and
so
Steve,
has Harrington Salisbury issued their opinion? Because I knew, I think somewhere it said Steve was out of town and it might,
Yeah, so.
they might not get to it for a while.
So there was, I think, when I initially spoke to them, there was some confusion on what I was asking for them. I really just wanted them to confirm that there's the stamp on their previous survey, like they're still willing to stand by that, and that they said they were. I think they were asking if they needed to stamp the site plan because they didn't make it. And that's not a requirement for a building structure subdivision, so they didn't have to stamp that.
So we don't need,
No.
Harrington Salisbury doesn't have
No.
to stamp anything.
Right.
Okay.
That makes sense to me, because it's existing building,
Mhm.
all the work's interior, as
Right.
far as this plan goes. It's surveys, the survey, and then, so, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Any other questions from the board?
I got nothing.
And I will open public hearing. Close the public hearing.
That's great.
Any comments from the staff, any other issues that
No, I got my small things, I might just ask to get reprinted for like the final copy. We've talked about them briefly, John is just correcting, I think somewhere in the application, it still mentions 4 dwelling units instead of 3, and just making sure we get that updated to be 3, so that what's actually approved matches. It says 3 some places, but says 4 others, just making sure it's consistent, but.
How far off are we from 500 square feet for the full dwelling?
It's like 25 or 24 feet.
So, maybe you asked this question already. Under the revised plan set, under the TRT, the 4th dwelling unit not 500 square feet,
Yes.
what was the decision, to remove it or
Yeah.
to move things
It's
around?
been removed from the site plans, or from the architecture plans.
So they're gonna remove it?
It's already removed.
Okay.
Yeah, and the level 2, it just says Unit 1D not subject, the front.
500 square feet may change later on.
We'll discuss later tonight, yeah.
Oh, brother.
Ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
You ready with your,
Yeah, I've got it.
with your exception? You want to do the whole thing?
I can.
Okay. Here's the language, though, the language from last time to make it consistent.
Don't look at your phone during the meeting. No, don't look at your phone.
So they changed the last time, they changed it to preliminary, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And all you have to do is change that to final
Okay.
and add your condition.
I think he's gonna repeat everything and then
Okay, move that we approve the final plan review of a subdivision of a new or existing structure entitled 59 Franklin for applicant Corey Wegland and owner 59 Franklin LLC. The proposal is to convert the existing restaurant into
3.
three residential units. The subject property is approximately a .27 acre lot located at 59 Franklin Street, tax map 134, lot 33 in the downtown zoning district. This approval on condition of applicant providing new and updated fire sprinkler plans and fire alarm system plans to be approved by the fire life and safety inspector before obtaining permits.
Second.
Does that meet your standards, Matt, as far as the wording?
Yeah, sounds good.
You're good? All in favor?
Aye.
You're approved, Court.
All right, thank you.
Good luck.
All right, thank you, Corey. Do you need me to wait, or?
The chair is winning.
Oh.
Can't see it.
Must have
Mystery
checked the
member.
dead spots.
Please continue.
All right,
Thank
so, just a quick update. I spoke to the city manager and he said that council should really only need one meeting to approve your recommendations after we go over these, so don't feel pressured tonight to vote these forward. If there are outstanding issues, we can take next month also, review them further if need be. And the council will just have December to vote on it, but, so just, if there are outstanding discussions, don't feel like we have to rush it tonight. You can take your time and we can talk about it again in November. But Article 4 has not changed since we last spoke. Again, the only two things, really one thing, but I'm removing anywhere it says in the table of uses that two-family dwelling units are not allowed in a zone explicitly has been deleted. And that's really it for Article 4. I'll skip Article 8 to go to Article 11. I don't think I put it in your packets because, again, nothing changed. It's just adding in the parking standards, a reference to the affordable housing standards in Article 8 for parking. So if you're trying to build affordable housing and you're looking for parking guidance, it just sends you to Article 8 where the performance standards are. That has not changed. Something else has changed. So we'll start in Article 14 again. And we'll,
Wait a minute, so are you going back to 8, or are you,
know that.
are
so
we gone with 8?
We're gonna go to 8 eventually, but I wanna start in Article 14 with the
Okay, all right,
definitions
okay.
like last time. I think we should start with the definition of a dwelling unit. Because, so originally, or last month, we had discussed the definition of cooking facilities. I have updated, which is within dwelling unit, and I have updated that based on the comments. So, if you want to review the definition I have now in place for cooking facilities. we can start there. And so I took out, kind of the ambiguous language, and then I just said it's a specific area, appliance, or other device that could reasonably be used for heating or reheating solid foods, and then put a list of those things, which would be, this could include hot plates, stoves, stovetops, ovens, microwaves, and air fryers, for example. I thought that was a pretty good cover of the things that people would actually use, but I also wanted to leave it open to be illustrative and not, what the actual list is definitive. And then just also point out the beverage preparation, such as a coffee maker, are not considered cooking facilities.
Okay.
If there's no comments on that, I mean, 'cause that was a suggested
I'm
change last
I'm just gonna back up, make sure I'm reading what I see right. So previously, we had this kind of one weird accessory common dwelling standing out by itself, so I see that's moved in with the dwelling, everything else that's in the, so that seems cleaned up. And that was essentially just moved, correct?
What are you referencing?
So, in the previous version, we had accessory dwelling up here on page one,
Oh, I
all
just
by
moved-
itself. And
yeah,
then we had
moved.
all the other dwelling definitions in a cluster, starting with D. So
Yes.
that one's been moved into the, with the rest of
Into
the,
the cluster.
yeah, into the cluster. The dwelling cluster.
We'll go down the line though, so cooking facilities right now though. But that's fine. I was also going to reference in that definition, the sleeping facilities, defined in Article 60, or Chapter 60, but Lori pointed out to me that that only applies to rental properties. So I just kind of left this as it was because I just wanted to note, I don't know if we need a definition for sleeping facilities on its own. I can write one if you guys would be more comfortable with that, but I'm not doing it for bathrooms because I feel like that one is also kind of self-explanatory. But I want to hear your thoughts before I put
Well, so
more
you do
thought
have a
into it.
definition for sleeping facilities, and it says a room or area in the studio apartment used primarily for sleeping.
Did I write that?
Page 32.
Oh, I did write that,
definitions.
yeah. I must have started writing it because that doesn't cover all sleeping facilities.
Yeah, that'd be very narrow.
Yeah.
Sleeping facilities.
So,
Yeah, either you don't define it.
Right.
Or you define it and make sure it's comprehensive.
what's it, if you have strong opinions one way or the other? I don't think it needs to be defined because we haven't had it defined for,
What does it need to be defined?
well,
The term
y-
sleeping
sleeping
facility.
Oh, okay.
It has not been defined previously. Lori, has that ever been an issue in determining whether something's a dwelling unit or not? It's usually been cooking facilities.
Cooking, and sometimes, at one time we were saying without a closet, it's not a sleeping facility. But then they put a bed in there, so.
Yeah, so I've run into that issue in other towns where
Mhm.
someone tries to get, clever, and they're like, well, there's no closet.
Yeah.
There is the subsurface wastewater regulations that the state puts out, through the Department of Health and Human Services. They have to define sleeping areas, bedrooms, because that's how they determine,
Usage.
capacity.
Yeah.
So they may have a definition in there, which I believe they do, which is very broad.
Okay.
So if you were to use a definition, you might want to look there, because as Lori notes, someone could be like, well, this room doesn't have a closet. Well, I remember in my bachelor days, many of my rooms, these apartments I lived with, didn't have one of them was a closet. So, yeah, no, seriously. So I don't think, but if people are, the whole point is if people are sleeping there,
Mhm.
you're right, we just want to make sure that it's captured. So I would either do a very broad definition that maybe those regs provide,
Mhm.
or you remove it and then it's up to interpretation. And I think the question is can someone, because someone can sleep in any room, right?
Theoretically.
It's a matter of, but for here, it's all about dwellings are about, do people sleep there?
Right.
So I think you don't need to define it, and you could be like, is this a bed? You know, okay, that's a sleeping facility, this is a dwelling, you know, like, I think it'd be that.
So we also have pull-out couches, you know, that have, the couch just kind of opens up to the
Yeah.
bed, and that can be in the living room.
Right. But if there's
Yeah.
if it's like a studio, that could be someone's actual bed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So again, the whole point of this, right, is we want to define what a dwelling unit is, because that's how we measure residential
Right.
use and occupancy, so.
Now, there's probably some of us up here that remember Murphy beds.
In studio apartments.
Yeah.
Does studio need to be defined?
We don't define any other type of apartment, but I could make a
Well, I don't know, I mean,
definition
I used to, everything else seemed to be, I mean, when I was reading through it, everything else just seemed to be defined, except that. But, I mean, I'm good with it. I mean, is it in general enough usage?
It's an apartment, and so like, it would fall under the definition of an apartment. But we don't have like, I mean, I don't define a one-bedroom apartment,
Okay.
two-bedroom apartment. It's just a style of apartment.
But those are clear, one bedroom apartment
Well,
is
that's-
one bedroom, right?
Uh-huh.
A studio apartment is a studio,
Right.
I think what's key here, in the cooking and then in the sleeping definition, you say or area. Without the or area, then we're kind of dictating the number of rooms that it needs to
Right.
be for a dwelling. So the or area is, you know, this area of my closet is where I sleep, and this area of my closet is where I cook.
It's my cooking facility that's there.
And I got a question on, okay, under the definition of dwelling unit accessory, it's gotta be a minimum of 190 square feet.
Can we put a pin on that and just finish dwelling unit?
Yep.
And then, so for so for sleeping facilities, it sounds like you would like a definition, and I can write a definition.
What's that, say?
It sounds like you would like a definition of sleeping facilities, and I can write a definition for it.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Is that like?
I don't want to overcomplicate it. We're not happy with the one that's already in here.
Well, if I do use that one, it's not, I think what my intent was to say, it's a room in a apartment or house, and then comma, or an area in a studio apartment, in case it is a studio, and then used primarily for sleeping.
Oh, because it
Because right
explicitly
now,
says
it
studio
kind of
apartment.
reads like it's
Right.
only in a studio
Yeah,
apartment,
gotcha.
yeah.
Yep.
I like the use of the comma.
Yeah. So, clean that one up, okay.
Yeah, I think it's the definition of bedroom under the subsurface wastewater rules, take a look at that.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna have, under sleeping facilities, if you have a room and area in a studio apartment, should you define what a studio apartment is?
I
We
can,
come around eventually, you know?
I mean, I
Well,
can.
you could, I think with definitions, right, it's, you could try to define everything, right? And the
Yeah.
thing, the rule of interpretation of an ordinance, if it's not specifically defined, you would go to, first you go to the common usage or
There you go.
dictionary definition. So if studio is apartment is defined in a dictionary. Another nice thing that some ordinances do is you even say at the outset of definition section, I don't know if this one does, say, you can kind of have a preamble saying all terms not herein not defined, shall, in this ordinance shall be, interpreted using Webster's 14th edition, whatever. And that can, and then like Bar Harbor does that. And the nice thing there is then everyone's playing from, because you can go find some varying definitions from various words. So that's a good way to, and then, so that might be something to add now.
Mhm.
And then that helps the planner when they're drafting things, or any applicant, any board in the future to interpret it, saying, oh, we use this copy of the dictionary, and if it's not in there, let's just go look at that word.
Along these lines, so here's a common usage definition of studio apartment. A studio apartment, by definition, is a single-room dwelling that combines the bedroom, kitchen, and living area into one large room. Open floor plan does not have walls separating the sleeping and living areas, and the kitchen area may or may not be separated by a wall. So, I mean, that would be common usage then. And thus, you don't really have to define studio apartment in here, your language could stand, I think, right?
I'll make a quick comment.
What's that?
I appreciate you using your phone for productive use, but Mike is also on his phone. We shouldn't really be on our phones during a meeting.
My phone's there, I know,
We're not supposed to use a phone?
No,
because we're meeting.
because you don't know, because the public won't know what you're technically doing on your phone. I don't know what you're doing on your phone. You could be talking to somebody, you know,
Would
like,
you like to read my phone?
no, I don't, but.
Anyway, based on my illegal use of the phone, I think that studio apartment does not need to be defined,
Yeah.
because it's generally well
All
known.
right, but I will
Okay,
add,
but I gotta, okay, so I gotta ask you a question though.
yeah,
Now, when the council meets, they all
I don't
have-
run council meetings.
They all have tablets.
I don't run council meetings.
And they're all looking at
They're all
stuff.
looking at their tablets.
That's a separate meeting. I don't run that one.
Okay, just, trying to be consistent.
See, that's the trouble with having a lawyer instead of an actual planner.
So when you get on council, you can deal with that, right?
Well, you're not voting for me, so I don't- At least I wouldn't vote.
Anyway, I think the spirit, here I'm gonna go talking about spirit again, right? I think the spirit of this is a place where people sleep, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to get at here. So, the studio apartment, not studio apartment, again, to Patrick's point, do you sleep in this structure 7 days a week, right? That's what we're going for. And I think the language you have covers that, and I think the definition of sleeping facilities you have in here, take out the studio apartment part, also covers that.
And Patrick, are you familiar, like, would it be a bad idea to say if it's not defined here and to follow what the state defines it as, or, because it's up in the air if the
Well,
state even
that's-
defines it?
It's either you explicitly reference
A
in
specific
that
legislation,
definition,
yeah.
a certain definition,
Mhm.
saying as defined under whatever,
Right.
whatever, but those things can all change, right? Typically definitions in a ordinance or like in a contract, right? You only define terms when you're trying to get at something that wouldn't normally be on the kind of standard use of the term.
Right.
So it makes sense here, like, we want to be able to define what a non-noise sensitive use is, right? That's not defined in dictionary, so we have it in here. I think for our purposes here, it makes sense to define sleeping and cooking facilities, because it's all getting at what a dwelling unit is, and that's all getting at what the spirit of this issue is we'd want to make it clear what a dwelling unit is, because that then triggers all kinds of stuff. I like Nels here just saying, Nels is saying, a room or area used primarily for sleeping.
Period.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense for me,
Mhm.
and thus, because then no one can say, well, whatever it is, that's a sleeping facility. So I like that, and that's the broad, so I don't think you need to go hunting down.
More for that, yeah.
Because again, we just want it to make sense for dwelling unit. The cooking facilities, we got into that because we wanted to, a little more nuance there, and I think you did a good job with it, so that's my 2 cents.
Cool.
I don't think we want to get into the business of telling people what their sleeping facilities are like. Like, you can hang from the rafters, I don't
Yeah,
care.
but
All
if
I'm
you're
interested
sleeping
in,
there-
are you
Right.
sleeping there?
you're sleeping
In whatever
there-
form you sleep.
And you cook food, and you have a bathroom, that's a dwelling unit.
Right.
Whatever. Whatever floats your boat.
Cool. If no more comments on dwelling unit, then we can
We
move
don't need to
to.
dwell on that. anymore.
No, too late.
We can
Well,
move.
wait a second, wait a second.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Okay, so the dwelling unit accessory has to be 100, at least 190
So
square feet.
you're jumping to where I'm headed next, but that's okay. Go ahead.
What's that?
I was gonna head there next, but
You want to go first?
I was just gonna explain what I've changed, and then if you have other questions, you could. So we moved it, and then we had the discussion last time about whether the 50% for the maximum size should be paired with a square footage as well. So I added a square footage based on the table. When Elena was here, she had started research and put this table together, looking at what other municipalities do for the sizes of their accessory dwelling units. and there was a pretty big range. Some of them were like as big as, I think it was 900 square feet, something like that. And then but they got as small as, like 300 square feet. And then the percentages varied too, so it was like 30% in some places, 35 in others, 50% in others. But 50% seemed to be the largest, generally. So I went with 750 square feet because it seemed to be like a middle ground between all the options that we had, and a lot of places also picked 750 square feet. Yeah, so I just wanted to get your thoughts were on that, or if you think we can go larger, but, I think the thought was that if you have a primary dwelling unit of 1,500 square feet, which currently is 3 times the size of our minimum size, that could change later too, but, you could do half of that building, and then for your accessory dwelling unit.
Do we have any history here in Ellsworth in terms of the size of accessory dwelling units?
Just the maximum size of 50, or do you mean what, like, the actual sizes
Yeah.
are? I don't know for the accessory dwelling what the size is, but the reason that we went with the 1,500 square feet to split that 50% is because when Larry ran the numbers, the average size of a primary dwelling unit in Ellsworth was 1,500 square feet. Was a little bit under, it was like 1,460 something, but
Close enough.
just rounded it up, yeah.
I was looking at this document, and, what, the towns that are listed,
Mm-hmm.
it just seems like we're all over the place here. There doesn't seem to be any common denominator between one town or the other as to what they're doing. I mean,
They're all in Maine.
every one of them seems to be different.
Yep.
And this is a conundrum for developers and people. I mean,
It's home rule.
you know, if you have a developer that lives in Ellsworth and we're doing one thing, and he goes to the town of Wyndham or Westbrook, he has to do something totally different.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought this thing was supposed to be something that was gonna be across the board, everyone was gonna abide by one specific standard.
Not in this way. I mean, LD 2003 has standards that everyone has to abide by and change their ordinances to meet, but the maximum size of a dwelling unit is left to the municipality to determine. The minimum size is determined. We all have to have a
And-
minimum size for the accessory dwelling unit.
You know, and I get the idea of the minimum sizes, but the other item, the item other is just unbelievable. Some of them are requiring one additional parking space. Some are requiring a number of occupants, and some
Well,
are
this- I will say
requiring
this
one,
is-
some are requiring 3, some are requiring 2.
And what would you have us do?
You know,
So there's no resolution to that answer? No.
there's no resolution in that answer. I mean, you know,
There's just
I-
commentary.
it's just, to me, it's just really all over the place. And I don't understand that. Maybe I'm just simple.
This isn't, I'm taking this is not a positive takeaway, but one of the takeaways here is within the gross boundaries, we can do whatever we want. I mean, Cape Elizabeth says, they talk about the personal relationship type that you have with the occupants, like.
I like
yeah,
that
this is-
one.
It's
Yeah,
all, it is all over.
It was amazing.
So it just kind of, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think the point you're making is that, and Matt said home rule authority, and that's what it is, right?
Right.
So towns can kind of, which makes sense, right? You know, some, Cape Elizabeth and Ellsworth are two very different places. I know this, I grew up next to Cape Elizabeth and have my opinions of that town. But, you know, every town's different. I think what we're, again, back to the concept of spirit, right? We're trying, you know, the state has passed these, you know, this new law saying, in essence, let's get more housing, let's allow people to have ADUs on their property. Our job here as planning board is to say, but then they didn't say, and they had a few minimum requirements, but the rest is up to us. And which we know Ellsworth better than the state does, and so we're trying to think, well, what makes sense for Ellsworth? And I like what Matt did here is, I really like, saying, hey, here's a bunch of different ones, here's how they've done things. So really, ultimately, it's up to us. I think, again, what we're trying to do is make it so someone can build a second dwelling on their property and use it for whoever to live there. You know, in-law apartment, kids, you know, adult children, you know, who know, you know, everyone's family is different, but, so I think what ultimately, I want to make sure that we're not, we want it to balance, right? We don't want to let anyone do whatever they want on the property, but we also want to make sure they can
But I
use it
think
for that
it
function.
gives guidance too on when you go from an accessory dwelling to a second primary dwelling.
Yep.
And so it provides clarity to a developer.
I think so. I mean, I think this 750, looking through this, is pretty in there. I really like Scarborough's because they do it kind of tiered depending on the size of the primary dwelling unit, but they never let it get bigger than 1,050 feet. But again, we're not Scarborough, and it's kind of whatever we decide on. I'm of the opinion that as long as it doesn't have negative impacts on the property, you know, as far as stormwater discharge and, you know, abutting neighbors and all that, then, and we satisfy all the other minimum lot standards, which, you know, do we have minimum lot coverage in most zones?
No.
We don't
not-
have in
There's
any
only
zones.
one zone that has it.
Is that the drinking water?
No, it's actually the urban zone.
Okay. Well, so we don't
It's
have that,
it's
right?
commercial,
So,
sorry, it's commercial zone.
yeah, so anyways, again, that all goes towards a balance between being able to use your property for what you want and then not having a negative impact on, you know, people around you. This is a long way of saying, I think there's no one right way of doing it, and I think what Matt's put together looks good to me. And if it, in a year, if it turns out, oh, we're really screwing things up because we should have let it go up to 1,000 square feet, then we come back here and say, let's fix it.
Change it.
And then we kick it up to the council and, you know, so I think that's what, I think this is as good as any. It's an educated, best attempt at figuring out something, but we need something, and so I'm fine with this.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
It just seems to be a conundrum of places that, you know, if you were a developer, you would
Oh,
be
yeah.
scratching your head.
Oh, yeah, well, why do you think land use lawyers love working in Maine? 'Cause you gotta go to every town's different, and, you know, it is, there's not.
That's how you make your money, right?
That's how we make our money. We get lawyers that make up all these weird definitions, and there's a conspiracy.
So we should be really
And-
careful about your opinion then in this particular regard?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
you shouldn't care.
Lawyers and how planners make definitions.
Yeah, you know, we've got a whole secret society where we talk about it. I think this is a good, I think it's, yeah, you're right, and we gotta pick something.
Yeah.
Now, didn't the state say that an accessory dwelling unit has a minimum size of 190 square feet?
Yes, it has to be at least 190 square feet.
But then some of these towns on here.
Well,
have-
these are not edited, you know, post LD 2003. This is what they have prior to LD 2003.
Okay. Okay, getting back to my question?
No.
Okay, so an accessory dwelling unit has to be at least 190 square feet. The dwelling unit principal has to be, still in here, has to be 500 square feet.
Yep.
Now, if I remember correctly, I don't have that chart or the spreadsheet, this, information that the state provided. But now, the residents could have, if I remember correctly, 2 accessory units on their property?
No, we only allow, and we can control this, we only allow one, well, yeah, you can only have one accessory dwelling unit on our property with a single-family home.
But I guess I gotta wonder, why does an accessory unit can be as small as 190 square feet, but a dwelling unit principal has to be at least 500 square feet? Are they performing the same function, or?
They're not really performing the same function. I mean, they
People
could
are living
be.
there.
They could be, but like, it's about who's living there, and what the, so like, if your accessory is really supposed to be like an in-law suite, or like, you know, people are gonna build them for short-term rental, And so it's not like really a full, like, family living in there. But like, I don't know, I mean, like, if you want, I mean, are you trying to suggest that we should make dwelling units this minimum size of 190 square feet?
Well, I just wonder why it's okay for somebody to live full-time in an accessory unit that's 190 square feet. It could be a single person, it could be a couple,
Yeah,
but we're saying, okay, we're saying, Corey, you can't add that fourth bedroom
yeah.
apartment because you don't have 500 square feet. I mean, it just seems a
Well,
little.
but part of it is that the accessory dwelling unit is supposed to be subordinate to the principal
Right.
dwelling unit anyway. And one way it's subordinate is a size differential. Not necessarily the only, but
But it's still a dwelling unit.
Right, and so like the 190 square feet in, I'd be surprised if someone could meet the definition of dwelling unit that we have and fit it all in 190 square feet. I mean, they could, potentially.
Because that's kind of getting into tiny home territory, right?
Right.
You
For
have
sure.
proprietary
You're
architecture to
sleeping in
make
your
everything
bathtub
fit.
and,
You're in the closet.
yeah.
I mean, like,
I did it, it wasn't pleasant.
there are, like, yeah, like in New York, yeah, there are plenty of apartments that are like 190 square feet, but like, we're not in New York. So like, they don't really exist here right now. Probably it's better that you don't. You do want people to have space to actually live and like, you know, do things and not just be shoved into a closet like Patrick was.
I do it on my own volition. I think another way to think about it, John, is like, you know, if we're, you know, you want each lot, each parcel of land in Ellsworth that you could build a residence on. It's, to some degree, you want to make sure that it's being used some, you know, to a point where it's actually functional residence. And I think that's maybe what's behind the 500 square feet. So if someone doesn't just buy up a lot of land and plop 190 square foot homes on each one, right? And then you talk about housing pressures and concerns. So you're right, 500 square feet seems pretty arbitrary. And I think having a minimum for a dwelling, at least in theory, I don't know the numbers based off it, but it's like saying, well, that's enough, at least, you know, one person can live here. I think tiny homes, don't they have a?
It's a maximum of 400.
It's a maximum of 400, right?
And so maybe we'll get to it a little bit later, but I changed the 500 to 400, so that way if you're building a tiny home with the purpose of being a primary dwelling unit, it can be at its maximum 400 still and be a primary dwelling unit. But for building it as an accessory dwelling unit, then you do have the options of the 190 square feet to the 400 square feet.
Well, then shouldn't it be changed here in the dwelling unit principal definition to 400 square feet if you're gonna do that?
I could have sworn I did. That's where it's supposed to be changed.
Okay.
That rings familiar. I feel like
Yeah.
we touched on this last time. And for me, if I'm even tracking this, it makes sense that the tinies go to 400 and the regulars start at 401. Because then for the developer, for the landowner, for whomever, you've got a box that you're gonna fit in, right? Like if, for whatever reason, you can't build more than 400 square feet, this is the architecture you need to be thinking about and the rules to follow. Over 400 feet, you're in the standard rule book.
Well, so tiny homes can be, if we want tiny homes to be allowed to be a primary dwelling unit, that's why I set it at 400. So it'd be its maximum size allowed by the state, and you could technically build a tiny home, but is a primary dwelling unit.
As a primary.
Right, as a primary dwelling unit. So if you make it 401, then all tiny homes can't be.
Right, what I'm saying is if we make the minimum size 400, then there's no gap. If I come to Ellsworth and say, I want to build a 450 square foot house, what set of rules do I use? I think there'll be a lot of hemming and hawing right now. If we make it 400 and below for tiny, 401 and above for regular.
Well, it goes to the
Again,
use.
if I'm following,
of
that
it.
seems common sense, common man logic, that makes sense to me.
So like if you're building a tiny home as the primary, it's, you know, staff can determine it's the primary because it's the main use, the primary use
Yeah.
of that lot. If there's already a home on it and you're building the tiny home at 400 square feet, it's probably gonna be the accessory. Well, it would have to be kind of the
Yeah,
accessory.
so you don't have to make it 401 or not then, as I understand what you're saying. But I think 400 makes a lot of sense, and it gets to John's question here too. Now it's no longer an arbitrary number as far as we know. 400 square feet and below is a tiny home, as we define it. 400 feet and up, square feet and up is the minimum for any primary dwelling unit. A tiny home can be a primary dwelling unit, thus they're not in conflict. And then if we go back to the ADU, accessory dwelling unit definition, the minimum size for ADU is 190 square feet. The way, basically, if you have a 400 square foot tiny home, your biggest ADU could be 200 square feet, so it satisfies that minimum.
Right.
So it gets you over that line. So to me, that makes a lot of sense. Again, right, you're picking numbers out of the air, sort of, but now at least if the state's saying tiny homes are 400 and less, then we can say, great, regular homes are 400 and above, and then it still fits within our ADU definition that we put together.
Much more eloquently than how I put it, but I don't like the gaps. I like smalls go to 400, and things that are not small go above 400. Let's do that.
I mean, it just seems contradictory that, okay, you can live in a 400 square foot house, so we're gonna call it this, but an apartment, it's gotta be 500 square feet, because it's an apartment. But you can live in 400 square feet if we call
Somewhere
it a
else.
tiny home.
All right. So we're fixing
But
it.
there.
I like
but there-
Patrick's idea, make everything 400 square, cut the minimum dwelling size to 400 square feet.
Get credit for my idea.
I'm good at that.
I'm good at,
I do it often.
Ooh,
That's a great idea,
compromise.
man. I think one thing should flow into the next, and there
I
shouldn't
think
be a
you
weird
can
gap
make
in
it
between
Yeah.
them. That's what I think.
I figured 200 feet was close enough to 190. That's
Am I
like,
swaying,
if you have a primary tiny home.
190 is a weird number to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And the
they
state had
based it
no
on
reason.
some type of fire code, I think,
We
what
don't
the
know
state
about
said, but I don't know.
I really, actually, now that we talked about it, I think it makes a lot of sense. And it seems clean and then somewhat
no, it's a way
arbitrary.
tidier.
And ultimately, a lot of this is arbitrary, John, right? But we have to pick numbers that everyone can follow.
But
the
these are,
rules.
I mean, they are arbitrary at the same time. They're based on some common wisdom
Yeah.
here. Like if you go and look up the definitions of tiny homes, you
Yeah,
get some
yeah.
numbers.
So it's actually not arbitrary, but
No.
it is, in this sense, it's
Well,
but
why
in-
not 350 or whatever?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
in that
who
sense,
knows?
it's arbitrary,
Well,
but by
everybody
and
else
large,
has
there's
picked
still a
numbers, why
logic
can't
to
we?
it, and that's.
There's a-
Yeah,
an internal
so,
I mean-
logic of some sort.
If-
Yeah, exactly.
If everybody else has picked numbers, why can't we?
Yeah.
Well, we
Well,
have.
there are.
Yeah, I
So
like,
what we're saying is our two arbitrary numbers, we should at least align them with one another.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
No, I get it. No, I'm with you. Yeah.
I think it's a pretty clean,
I
elegant
think the idea of
solution.
these gaps is not a good thing.
Yeah. Get rid of the
Good one,
gaps.
Cool.
Tom, you had enough?
This is too arbitrary.
And then aside from moving definitions again,
So just confirm for dwelling unit common principle, that will be 400, not 500?
yes. The next change is going to where I split hotel and motel into their own definitions. I had a member of the public reach out, and he mentioned that in the definition of motel, at the very end, it says these accommodations cannot meet the definition of a dwelling unit. So even if they had everything in theory to be a dwelling unit, a motel could not operate as an apartment complex essentially. He was just wondering if we could add that to a hotel as well. I didn't see a reason why not. And I'd just
I'm
stick
sorry,
with
you're
it.
gonna add that to both hotel and motel?
I'm saying I can, and I think it's not a bad idea that.
Oh, yeah,
we do
absolutely.
that.
I mean, it makes no
Right.
sense for one, to me, to have it for one and not the other.
Yeah.
I guess my only question is, sometimes hotels and/or motels are used for long-term stays, for
Well, I don't have a limit on how long you can stay in a hotel or a motel.
so there's no limitations on,
Right, but it can't be used, you can't say it's a dwelling unit. You're operating as a hotel, you're
Yeah.
operating as a motel.
but we're not gonna, but then if someone's there for 6 months because they're on a job or
Right.
whatever, we're not gonna say you can do
No.
And
we're
that's not limited in any way.
No.
that. Yeah, all right, that's as long as that's the
Yeah,
case.
because, I mean, like the white birches is used, for longer term
In
relocations.
the summer, a lot of these places are used for, folks coming from out of state to work.
Right.
Without getting into their business too much, I think that's just, I'm gonna rent this for a while and I'm not gonna leave, as opposed to, you're not signing a 12-month lease with the
Yeah.
hotel.
Right.
You're just not leaving.
It just provides clarity for what the use actually is for that structure. It's, either a hotel or motel, or it's an apartment complex. Like, it's never gonna be, you're coming to planning board for approval for one of those, and that's what has to be, like, moving forward.
Okay.
I mean, another benefit of doing it that way is if you consider the dwelling unit and, you know, in a motel, then you're gonna get into the issue of the motel owner having to evict
Right.
someone versus, okay, you didn't pay your rent, get out, call the police department, and they can kick somebody out right away.
Right.
You know, they don't have to go through the
Eviction
eviction
process.
process.
Right.
Which is long, or
Yeah.
can be long.
Which would be a disaster for motels.
Right.
You can see it now, geez.
Yes.
So I'll go back to your hotel motel.
Yes.
Just a quick question. In the very last statement, and in which ingress and egress to and from all rooms is made through an inside office or lobby.
Right, we had discussed that.
We've got
last-
some that don't have to go through lobby to egress.
That's a motel.
Are you talking about, so if you're jumping out a window or something?
No, I'm talking about a sliding door that goes out onto a balcony
balcony.
and then down a set of stairs that goes down to the ground of the parking lot.
Wouldn't that be, then be a motel?
I was gonna
That's-
say,
it's
is
a
that
definition
motel
of
by
a
definition
motel.
then?
It
So
has the
that-
same, it has the same characteristics as this.
Does it have the same words?
No.
Yeah, I remember this from last time. The way I thought about this last time is.
name two right now that you don't have to go through an all lobby to get to the room.
And that's a motel.
That's a motel.
Yeah,
That's a
that's-
motel.
I raised that issue last
Right.
time, because I was confused.
So
I was
last
like,
month, you brought up the point of the egress separated the two.
Yeah.
And motels exit to the outside directly, hotels exit to an interior, again, office or lobby of some sort.
Yep.
What would you like to see added to the definition of hotel to differentiate them more?
Free coffee.
Free coffee. Hotels have to provide free coffee.
Hang on a minute, let me see what you got
Well,
here.
you know, the other thing is that people may call, you know, hotels motels and vice versa,
Yeah.
even though they, by
Correct.
definition, aren't.
And I will also say, at this point
Because
in
Holiday Inn
time-
puts up a sign that says I'm a motel.
Yeah, we don't
Doesn't
care
make
what
them a
they call
motel. I mean,
themselves.
it's,
Yeah.
Right.
but legally, it's a
We call
hotel,
them.
for example.
And an existing hotel/motel that may not meet this definition is still a hotel/motel, because when it was approved, it met the definition at that time. But this is for projects moving forward as well.
When I talked about this at the last meeting, it was kind of in reference to the comp plan and what we want to see, because depending on who you ask, if you were to ask them, do you want to see 20 more motels in Ellsworth? Do you want to see 20 more hotels in Ellsworth? You may not get the same answer, because they may think of these things, right
They're
or
the same.
wrong, they
They're
may
the same.
stereotype these things and put them in different buckets, because they are in fact, and I would be one of those people, because they are in fact different things. And at least for me, there's a little bit different expectation, stereotype around what a motel is and what a hotel is. So for me, that was what was important about the definition, is kind of related to the comp plan and what we want to build over the next 50 years, and do we want to see more of these, or do we want to see more of those? And they're different enough for me that I would call them different things in that conversation.
And I'll say, in relation to that, this step is kind of inconsequential for the most part. I mean, like, it will determine what is a hotel motel moving forward, but in the table of uses, they're still combined. So you can still do a hotel motel in all the
Right.
same places right now. And if we get feedback on the comp plan about that, then it could change further down the line.
Sure.
But this
So,
definition changed.
If we go to a hotel,
Mhm.
let's take consideration Comfort Inn,
Mhm.
okay? And Hampton Inn, all right? You do not have to go through the lobby to exit out of that building. If you go down the corridor into the exit stairwell, you go down the stairwell and out the door right outside.
Mhm.
Because it's the way people can egress out of that building.
So
you
maybe,
disagree with yourself from last time.
What's that?
Are you disagreeing with yourself from last time now that this isn't
Yeah,
a good
I mean,
differentiator?
Maybe he
don't have-
is, but he's right, though,
Yeah.
nonetheless.
Your definition of motel is fine.
Yeah.
The definition of hotel, having to exit through a lobby
Mhm.
is not necessarily the case.
Yeah,
There are
no,
other ways to
necessarily
exit a
have to
hotel
do
that's
that.
not the lobby.
Right.
I think what is still common though is when you leave your room, so when you walk out of your hotel room, you're still indoors.
So is it
When you walk out of your motel room, you are outdoors. If it's raining, you're gonna get wet. If you walk out of your room in a hotel, you're not gonna get wet.
So
For
maybe
me,
s-
that's kind of amazing.
saying that, so the Comfort Inn or Comfort Suites, whichever, can you get to your room through an interior lobby as well as through that exterior door, or is it the only egress?
Well, to check in, for example, you have to go
If
through
you
the
check
lobby.
in,
Right,
okay, and if you, let's say you leave for the night to go out to eat, you have to come into the building
Yeah.
and go through the lobby, up the stairs or whatever to the second floor.
Mhm.
If the fire alarm goes off, you do not have to come down those stairs into the lobby to get out of the building. You go down to the exit.
so we should
and
call
then
it
directly
primary,
outside.
primary ingress and egress is done through,
At the risk of a
Interior.
legally nebulous word, something like typical.
or then say like,
Typically
we
would
can have
exit.
like
But
an
I-
addition where.
to disagree with you on, if, in a motel, we've got motels where you have the option of either going directly outside or into a corridor or down to a lobby. You don't always have to go outside,
Yeah.
so.
Or could you just say which egress and ingress and egress is made from within the building? I mean, you're not
I
necessarily
think-
going through an office or a lobby, but you're exiting from inside the building versus
In-
the
from the room,
motel,
from the
which you're
room.
exiting
Yeah, I would say,
outside.
I would remove
From the
office and
room.
lobby but the issue is you've got ingress and egress. So you're kind of combining them. I don't know, it's.
Well, I think,
it's-
I think what we're getting at is ingress and egress to and from all rooms made through an interior space is basically what we're saying.
Interior hallway or
Interior
lobby.
hallway or
Yeah,
lobby.
a little less
Yeah,
specific.
you put that in there, there you go, right?
And then,
An
and make,
interior, an interior hallway would probably be better.
yeah, hallway or stairwell or whatever, however you
Right.
wanna say it. And then that makes sense, and then we all know what a motel is you get your key and you walk right up, usually park in front of where your room is
Yep.
and.
Yep.
go in.
Even if you're on
You
the
open
second
your,
floor with
you
a
Even if
open
you're
your
on the second
bedroom
floor,
door,
you
the
go
next
out.
door you're gonna open is gonna
Right,
be your car door.
Exactly, yeah, and I think that these definitions get there and to
So
Nelson's
the, so the
point.
key is to add the hallway,
Yeah,
interior
I would
hallway.
just use hallway, to exit out of the hallway.
And free coffee.
And free
Oh, jeez.
So do you think there's a need to say primary ingress and egress and then differentiate
No, no,
emergency?
I wouldn't use
Okay.
that.
No, I wouldn't either, because I mean, in point of fact, the primary ingress and egress, once you check in, will not necessarily be through the lobby at all.
What, yeah, Megan, I would have to define, I guess, primary ingress and egress at that point.
Yeah, well, primary would be, you know, the one you use all the time.
I would say it's a suggested front door, but.
You must stay in a higher class hotel than I
There
do.
is such a thing as a primary means of egress.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think in your definition, it doesn't need to be there.
Okay. Cool.
Leave it to the fire guys then, to find it.
I'm just trying to clarify, because somebody's gonna bring that up.
Well, and that's inevitable with, again, with ordinance drafting. You can't think of everything,
Right.
right? And you balance specificity with
Yeah.
efficiency, and I think that's where we're at
And
here.
that's why we
That
have
must
these
stay-
conversations.
That must stay at Hilton versus Motel 6.
For example.
Correct.
I'll say I only had to stay in a hotel once in Ellsworth before I started working here. And I had booked a room at the Atlantic Coast Inn, but something went wrong with the app I had booked on, and they never sent me the check-in information, and no one was there. So the only hotel I could go to, well, I didn't really know anywhere else, so I saw the Hampton Inn as I was driving, and so I had to go there and stay. So I stayed in both, eventually. I got a mix of both worlds, you know.
Are we done with that?
Hey, I'm good.
Good.
I like
Move
both.
along.
I like both places, just to say. So the motel, talked about that. So that one was fine though.
Yep.
Okay. And
He
then,
keeps jumping around trying to confuse us.
well, with the next
Doing a good
definition,
job.
talk about.
It's keeping you confused.
I was
What are
trying
we
to start
looking at now?
alphabetically. and I got
I'm
put
trying to
in
figure out what we
my
have to talk about now, because I'm pretty sure.
Short-term rental,
We had talked about that last time.
we're all
I
set with that one, right?
I didn't have any edits that noted for that one, but if anything's come up since then, we can talk about it.
Tiny homes hasn't changed.
No, not since the last time,
I think we did everything.
in terms of definitions, yeah.
Yeah.
So where are you?
Well, unless you have other comments, I'm ready to move on to Article 8.
Article 8, okay, it's all right with me, personally.
Let's do it.
Also, yeah, thank you for putting this together, by the way. This
I did
was
not,
handy.
but
Oh, you didn't?
I provided it to you.
Well, thank you for providing it. This was handy.
I think it's dated 2015, actually, so I think Elena might have done it when she was the assistant planner. So yeah, for
So you're giving
Article,
us old information on it.
I did check a lot of them. I did actually double check a lot of them, and they were
He
still
is
the
old.
same, so.
We're withdrawing our good work. Compliment.
So the first thing is accessory dwelling units at 805 in Article 8, which is still on page 6. Well, it leads on to future pages. So on page 7, again, I added the 750 square feet to the maximum size for the accessory dwelling unit. That has changed since last time, but if we're okay with the 750 square feet, I imagine that's okay to have there. I went back and forth on this, and I ended up confusing myself. So Patrick, I'll appreciate your opinion on this in particular. When I'm talking about an 805.6, I say, well, sorry, and go back to 805.2, the applicability, I say this applies to all dwelling units. And that only talks about having one dwelling unit on a lot, and then the size of the dwelling units, and then the types of dwelling units. So all dwelling units have to meet those. But then when I talk about 805.6, the requirements and exemptions, I say this section only applies to accessory dwelling units that are constructed on a lot, where single-family dwelling units are allowed, a single-family dwelling unit exists, and no other accessory dwelling unit currently exists. And then also, it would not be allowed to be constructed on the lot due to dimensional or density requirements of the applicable zone. And so that really ties into LE 2003, so like the density and lot exemptions apply in those situations. So like in the commercial zone where we allow accessory dwelling units but not single-family homes, you couldn't get these benefits necessarily. And then like the parking is also part of LE 2003. But the setbacks ones, the more I thought about it, I don't know if that is because of LE 2003, because we would generally, I think for all dwelling units, whether it's inside a building or attached to the building, you would consider it part of that single-family structure for setbacks and such. So I feel like I should move that up to 805, maybe make that 805.6, and then 805.7 as the LE 2003 specific requirements.
Why do you think you need to have them separate?
Because currently that's underneath only accessory dwelling units that are built because of LE 2003, but I think the setbacks portion should apply to all accessory dwelling units, because no matter whether or not it's built by LE 2003,
Yeah, you can't build it a foot away from my
Yeah.
property.
Well, we're
right?
still
Just
saying that,
because it's
like,
an accessory dwelling.
if you have the space and you're building an accessory dwelling unit attached to the primary home, you know, the point of the setbacks does technically come from LD 2003, but I don't think it's something that we would apply if you didn't
We
need to
would
use
still
LD
apply
2003.
setbacks regardless of whatever you build,
Yes.
though.
Right, and I guess that's what, we don't have, so like other municipalities have, like if you attach that accessory dwelling unit, you now have to double your setbacks because there's 2 dwelling units, but we don't have that anyway, so I wasn't sure if it really mattered where
That
we
seems like
put
an
it,
overcomplication.
Yeah, I
Like,
don't- I
All I'm
think
saying
it's
is,
fine.
just because it's an ADU, doesn't mean you get to encroach on your neighbor's land.
But- well, no, that's a
Right,
given,
that's-
but
Or
there's
getting
no,
closer
there's
to
not
the-
stricter requirements because you had
Yeah,
an
I don't
accessory
think you
dwelling
need to
unit.
worry about that.
Okay.
now. You do, one thing on 8057,
Mhm.
when I was just spouting off statutes, it's 4452, not 62.
4450.
Oh, my God.
But otherwise, and then another question is, technically, under state statute, you can go up to $2,500 a day for each offense. You can, instead of putting out specific numbers, you can just say, a violation of this ordinance shall be a civil violation punishable by fines as set out, and then cite that city statute again. And that gives the city more flexibility, and if that changes, the changes. with-
Everything
That way,
stays the
You
same.
The
you
state
want me to
changes,
update this
then-
as much.
Yeah,
And this
so,
is
yeah,
updated.
exactly, so, I do that with all municipalities I work with, just say, cite
Mhm.
state statute instead of
And that way,
setting out.
if each night rented is a different violation. You can see how much they're charging for a night. And then
Exactly,
Base it off of that.
exactly.
yeah.
Isn't your brother, right? So that would be a variable object in programming, so you don't have to redefine it every
Oh, there you go.
Can we go, are we done with that?
I am if Matt is, yep.
I just wanted to circle back to the parking thing right there.
Yes.
805.62B. Okay. Is that basically derived from the state statute about,
That is a requirement of LD 2003.
okay.
Yeah.
So that's nothing that we could fiddle with? Okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm reading this correctly, if let's say the original dwelling unit needed to have one parking space,
Mhm.
and you put another one in there, another whole person living in a ADU,
Yeah.
and they have a car, we
Yeah.
don't have to have a space for them.
No, we can't require them to have a space.
Okay.
If the person putting in the EDU is smart, they'll put a gravel pad or
No,
something.
no, I get that.
But,
Yeah, but the point is that that's
State requirement.
derived from the
Yeah.
state statute, right? Okay.
You say that's interesting. I'm looking at Lewiston in their ADU. They're requiring one additional
again,
parking.
Again,
this
these
is,
are-
this
these
is
are old.
pre-LD 2003, so
Yeah,
they
well,
have
these
not
are old and
updated them.
So
not
they've
responsive
changed-
to that.
They will have to
So
change
they can't
that.
enforce that.
That was more for sizes, so it wasn't for everything else that's there.
I still appreciate the summer.
I got that.
But no, I agree, it might present problems, but we'll see.
And on 805.7, and we talked about this last time, it said that the short-term rental for 10 years after the date, blah, blah, blah. And how is that guaranteed with changes in ownership? Does that become like a,
So this, is-
Probably go to pull the building permit, right, and it'll say this was approved on such and such date.
right,
And then
so the
that runs on the
requirement will be
land.
part of the certificate of occupancy. So I don't know, but Lori, maybe this is part of the process. If a building changes ownership for a CO, do they have, I don't think they have to come back to get a different one if it changes ownership, like a single-family home doesn't need to keep,
No.
yeah.
No, it runs
But-
with the land,
Yes.
yeah, the
And would that-
file.
Would that be
so
something?
is it in the deed though? Yeah?
No, it's not in the deed, it would be in the city's file. So the city has a file on each property,
Every
and
property.
when I bought my house in 2017, the people that, whatever they did beforehand, including like my septic design and all that, from 1994 is in there.
Yeah.
And
I
it
mean, would
just-
that be something that Larry Gardner could incorporate into?
Yeah, I mean, so when I talked to Rudman Winchell, their suggestion was just to have it added onto the certificate of occupancy, like a checkbox, and like with the details of how long it has to stay and when the start date was.
mean,
But Larry
lists-
could put it on a tax card too.
Yeah, I mean, Larry lists, the house, attached to,
Right.
garage, detached garage, accessory unit.
Yeah, and I think there is a date assigned on tax cards, there's usually a date of new construction of
So
structures.
they could have like a accessory dwelling and then like year-round versus accessory dwelling, doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
And again, like, these are good questions to have, because I'm sure eventually we'll have to talk about them in relation to multiple types of short-term rentals or property uses. But for this use, this is gonna affect a very small percentage of
Okay.
properties. These are good things to be thinking about.
And it just seems like, where the property cards are, permanent records versus code enforcement keeping a list, in a file cabinet someplace.
Well, the CO is a record that,
It's the
Yeah, it's
same
in
as
their
property card.
property file.
The only thing that like supersedes all that is the registry of deeds, but we can't require, I guess we could, but we don't wanna require people to put covenants and deeds and stuff. But I think, are the assessor's files at all linked to the code enforcement files?
He doesn't really have files except for some digitized files.
The digitized
Yes.
files, yeah.
And they are not linked to my files.
No,
but
but.
what
I mean,
he
but-
does do is, so whenever Lori gets build permits, which she would have to get to do a accessory dwelling unit, Larry then looks through those and sees what's been built and changed, and that's like flags properties and stuff like that.
Amazing, different from city to city. True.
Again, I think with these new changes, right, it's, if we find out in 2 years, oh, this isn't working, but this is probably what we should do, then you come back and you just change that definition, or we change it, or employ a different policy.
And I can ask Larry, can he make, or what would be the most sensible code change for him to be able to denote on tax card, like this accessory dwelling unit is like restricted for short-term rental, and then another one that says this accessory dwelling is not, and come back to it. I don't know if it would go into the code, but at least it would be something you could just have and know that it's flagged in different places.
Yeah. Is that it, Nate?
Yeah, ADU might have been the only one, because I don't think we changed anything, because the ones for affordable was really just the state's requirements, like pretty much word for word.
I'm sorry, so 826 is word for word, is that what you're saying?
Pretty much, I just took, they don't have this written anywhere, but I just took their definitions and their standards and just typed them out myself in an organized way.
Okay.
Looks like you might have some font size.
Maybe,
11 versus 12.
possibly.
It happens to the best of us. So yeah, I think just consistent font size.
Where were you saying that?
826.
826.
It looks like, I may be wrong, but it kind of looks like to me that sub 2 and 3 might be 11-point font, where
I don't know, it does have a
Oh,
little
it's- I
thing
think-
that says 12 at
Is it just the bold?
826.3.
well, it says that for development of bonuses. I don't
Oh,
know.
but you think underneath in 1 and 2?
Just
it's
double check,
smaller. It does
you
look
know.
smaller.
If I'm wrong, let me know, and you can send me like.
Hold it against you.
Yeah, hold it against me.
Next month.
It's just a
meeting.
check in that box.
Yeah, just gotta check that box.
Not for a discussion tonight, but are you in the process of working on the lighting standards still?
I will be. I'm trying to figure out how much money I have to spend on something like that.
Okay, I figured as much.
Because housing is.
That's not an easy one. I think that's gonna be more difficult than this thing with the housing, I'll be honest.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Probably just have to satisfy you though, so it may be easy.
Not
to
me.
work with one person.
Well, that's why it'll be so difficult. It says.
Is that the end of it?
It could be. We do have a little bit of time, and again, you have an extra month. Are there things that you think, are there broader discussions you would like to have about these ordinances that could potentially be changed by our deadline with these changes? Or are there topics you would like me to start looking at, so that, maybe not for LD 2003, but, the next or legislative change or forced change we have, I can already start working on stuff and bring it to you guys, and then we kind of have it ready, and we just slide it into the next set of edits.
What was that issue we snagged last month about this project we just approved, and there's some inconsistencies in the definition of
Oh, major site.
major sub.
Plan.
That would
Over
require
between major.
overhauling chapter 28, which is not what I'm referring to in this sort of thing, but we do have to do that. at some
Well,
point.
said you were looking for work. I'm just
That's
saying.
right.
I'm not looking for that much work. I mean,
Wait till you start getting the comments back at the comprehensive plan.
We should
We'll
be-
take up your time.
We should plan for that, though, for next fiscal cycle, when I can budget for, again, like, just knowing I'm gonna have to send a citywide mailing probably, and then we're gonna add it into, chapter 56. We'll probably slide it into Article 7, because that's been empty for a while. But that's like a big project.
Well, we touched last time, and I had a discussion with Matt on, if other businesses, properties in the downtown area convert from businesses to residential, how does that affect downtown parking? Now, luckily, Franklin Street has a little bit of their own parking, but if he adds another 3 units, he doesn't have enough parking area there on site.
He technically does. If it was new construction, he wouldn't. But he does because it's not new construction.
But, the more
But the point remains.
Right, but I'm
dwelling
saying, the
units get
nuance.
put on Main Street, let's say, I think the antique place on Main Street that's been for sale.
Yeah,
And let's say
Dreamcatcher.
she decides, or somebody decides to convert the whole thing
Yeah.
to residential,
Or even just the top floors.
you know, what does that do to parking downtown? I mean,
Well,
believe
the,
me, and it's an issue because, you know, the police department is always dealing with, you know, people living there or parking in municipal parking lots, interfering with snow removal. You know, how do you get a hold of them? Sometimes they don't get a hold of them, they end up being towed, and are you taking away, you know, parking places from businesses who need it to exist?
yeah,
You know, should we take a closer, you know,
How do you balance that?
yeah, you're gonna have to balance it. The project there on Franklin Street, when he goes to phase two, that L, if I'm not mistaken, is still recessed in where there's parking and can be in front of those units. Am I not correct with that? Because the
Yeah.
businesses had parking there
In front.
in front, so there really shouldn't be an issue with parking when he puts those apartments in.
I don't know.
but he's using that for snow storage too.
Oh, for Pete's
I
sake.
think the conversation we're getting at, though, is if we're going to increase residential uses in downtown, regardless if it's by design, or through a comp plan, or just as it happens, parking's an issue that needs to be addressed. And the comp plan, I know we keep kicking things to the comp plan, but that's a big deal. I think, you know, and comp plan directs amendments to the ordinance, right? So if the comp plan says, comes out and says, hey, we want more housing downtown, which it very, very well may, then obviously parking becomes a big consideration. And what are those requirements, and how are we gonna, you know, allocate and find, you know, the necessary parking?
But that's not necessarily a problem that's solved within the comp plan.
No, it's solved by, it's us here.
Exactly.
But then I think what we're talking about is Franklin Street highlights this issue, but it's a broader systemic issue if Dreamcatcher changes. So, but I can't say I know our parking requirements for the downtown residential units.
It's very lax.
Very lax.
Because
and
there's
that's
so
just-
much satellite parking, so there's like an exemption for like, if you're parked in certain, there's like different zones in the downtown, there's like A, B, and C, and there's different requirements for parking based on which zone you're in, but like downtown zone A, it's close to this parking lot out here,
Mhm.
and so it's like, and Franklin Street parking, the parking lot across the street, it's like, well, there's so much satellite parking, you can get a reduction of like this percentage
Mhm.
and not have to add in more spots.
Yeah.
But again, like, there's also the caveat, which this project is technically using, I don't think it's as quite a big deal, but it could be, in the future, where if you're not doing new construction, if you're just changing the interior of a building, you do not, you're just changing the use of the building without changing the building itself, you do not have to add more parking.
Yeah, yeah. So I think this all goes towards, I think it's something that needs to be figured out. And,
No, absolutely. I mean,
But
you know,
through-
there's a whole movement in planning to do away with so much, you know, service given away to parking.
Mhm.
Okay? But the flip side of that is always like, okay, but, you know, your density is such that, and your.
Yeah, and we're not New York
land-
City where only 1 in 10 people actually own a car.
Well, that's exactly
versus,
right.
you know, we're still rural Maine.
If
where
the
everyone
community
owns
were
a car.
completely walkable and whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
then you could say, oh, yeah, I can live downtown in an efficiency or whatever,
Yeah,
you know, without a parking space, and I'm all good.
yeah,
And we're not at that point.
no. Maybe we see
And probably not gonna be-
giant parking garage right in the middle of downtown, you know.
But if
Well,
we
and
are
that keeps
gonna-
going around in Bar Harbor every time, right? I mean,
But
don't
the
we need a parking
flip,
garage?
the flip side is if you're gonna, you know, you could also, you know, if we know we are still gonna have to require parking, then you can make a requirement that maybe some of it's pervious parking as opposed to impervious surface.
Yeah.
So you're helping reduce maybe some of the negative impact.
Yeah, still.
But the, you know, the interaction with those, like, oh, they can park in the street, that's all well and good until they start plowing.
Yeah, or there's an emergency.
I remember years ago, I lived in Bangor, and it, you know, they do alternate sides of the street, you know, in terms of plowing. So, you know, at midnight, you run out and move your car from one side of the street to the
Yeah.
next, if you were parking on the street.
When I lived in a
which was.
closet in Portland, we had to do that. too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Actually, we gotta open those to a public hearing on item number 5.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So So I'll open it to a public hearing, and I'll close it.
Well, I feel so much better.
Good job.
I'm surprised Nelson didn't.
I think these are in good shape, Matt. I don't, for what we've done, I think it's ready to go to council. I don't think we had anything lingering, other than some minor changes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that they're minor changes and they can still send them to you before submitting it to council. You can't reply to everybody.
I know Glenn's saying they probably only need one, but maybe it's not a bad thing to give them
Mhm.
more than 1 month in case.
Yeah, well, that was the original plan, but you said don't feel rushed, like don't make the planning board feel rushed if need be, but.
I mean, one of the comment I was gonna make is, I think sooner than later, we should be advertising for planning board members.
Well, that was staff comments, I was
Okay.
gonna talk about that, yeah.
Okay.
So,
I thought we were already there, okay.
Well, I think we need to vote on whether we're gonna send these to the
Right, yeah.
city council.
or have just make a motion, discuss, and then, you know.
I mean, with whatever little changes that Matt has.
Yeah, I would move that we send it to city council for their
Second.
consideration, subject to the minor revisions.
I agree. All in favor? Okay. Now staff comments.
So, when I found out Patrick was running for council, I called him, and I just asked him, you know, what his preference would be. You know, we have to advertise for one seat already. I said, like, I could put you on the agenda for the October meeting and have you affirmed as a full-time member, or we could wait, see what happens in November. We have a pretty good core to get a quorum most of the time. If he wins his election, we'll just advertise for 2 seats at the same time then. If not, we'll still have 1 seat open and advertise that seat at that point. But Patrick is still here for this meeting in November. So again, we have 5 people that can show up because Mark won't be here next month either, he said.
Well, I think you can do an advertisement, and you don't have to necessarily specify it's for 1 seat or 2.
Well, I mean, that's true. I could advertise for it without really saying how many seats there are.
Because if it goes too
Yeah.
far, and when Pat gets elected, we're down to 5, and very easily could have 2
Right.
members missing,
Mhm.
and we're dead in the water.
No, that's true. We can just advertise.
Yeah, no,
and
I
collect.
think you advertise without specifying a number.
No way.
And if you knew the number, you can specify, but you don't
Mm.
actually know it.
Appreciate your optimism in my,
Hmm.
likelihood of success.
Don't let it go to your head.
Don't worry, I'm not.
The chits are just piling up for you.
Yeah.
Remember us little people when, when you get elected.
Well,
The next,
When we
Don't
get-
forget to- don't
When
forget
we
to
bring
vote.
changes to the council.
the next item is just a comp plan update for, well, I guess I do have news for people who are more in the know. We did get the draft of the inventory analysis from the consultants. The comp plan steering committee is reviewing it over the next month, and they'll have a deep dive discussion about it at the October meeting at the end of this month. I thought it was very well done. There are some small changes, but overall, I thought they covered everything. I did ask them for a little bit more context to certain like data points, just to provide a more full story. And people who aren't, you know, as plugged in, might look at a percent change graph without the context of, oh, what was the actual change? You just see like a percent one way up, but you go from 2 to 4 and the percent's gonna look really big, but you could go from 1,000 and.
You're already taking my comments into effect, even without seeing them.
Not perfect. So that's what they're working on now and currently. The citywide mailing for the survey, the comp plan survey, if you haven't taken it yet, go on the city website and do the survey for the comp plan. It will be going out hopefully in a week, by the end of this week or the beginning of next week. So there was discussion at the steering committee about trying to get every rental unit sent the comp plan survey. I didn't know this, we actually don't keep a database of every single rental unit. Even our 911 doesn't have that. It's just like for every property, so there's not like an address for it in our database, like we know how many there are. And 911, fire and police know like where they're located, but it's not in our like vision system. but we still had enough data to send it to about, I think it was 6,500 units in the
That's
city,
not too bad.
which is more than just the tax,
So are you sending it
addresses.
to, like, resident, or are you sending it to Bob or Susie resident?
It's the name that's on, yeah,
Okay, on the,
in the vision system. So, but so like, if there was a duplex and it's being rented, it's gonna go to that parcel owner, or to the owner of, but if they were sold and there's different owners for each duplex, it's gonna go to whoever owns and lives in each of those duplexes.
and there was no way to get the voter rolls?
I didn't think that was a great idea. I thought I
You know,
said,
democracy in action.
I thought I
Who do
said
you
that
ask,
at the
right?
steering committee
I think that was my
meeting.
idea.
Oh, okay. I get, normally get credit for the bad ones.
Thanks, Matt.
What about going out with them to, like, you know, like the, to Hannaford's or whatever, and, you know, have a high school kid standing there saying, hey, do that?
Well, I don't know if I'm gonna have a high school kid yet, but I've ordered ballot boxes essentially. That'll be going to, I think it's at least, we have 10 of them, so we'll be going to at least 10 locations in the city. And Hannaford, Shaw's, like the grocery stores.
So there'll be somebody there with giving them to people?
Well, the ballot box will always be there.
Yeah.
I can recruit steering committee volunteers to be there. They hand them out to people. And I have to reach out to the school still to see if there's high schoolers that would be able to do that sort of thing.
Well, could you do something like that at the elections?
We could, yeah, because there will be a box here in City Hall anyway, and so we could encourage people to take it. Like, there's that table where you go, there's always the two tables right when you walk in.
Yeah.
We could have them sitting there and have somebody there to promote.
But you could also have somebody at the polling places, possibly.
Well, that's what I
Yeah.
mean.
Well, like, the city already has staff there, so I could ask them to see if it would be too much to.
Yeah, just,
work
you know,
it.
give it out and somebody.
Because Matt actually won't be in Maine on election day, so Matt.
What's that?
Matt won't be here on
Matt
election
won't be
day,
there?
so. But I
By the
can-
way,
yeah.
but you know, you need
Make
to
sure you
talk,
vote absentee.
talk to the clerk in terms of, are you registered to vote here? Yeah, never mind, don't answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, you check with the clerk though to make sure that, you know, whatever the rules are about him, you know, being in a polling place, doing stuff,
Yeah,
are
followed, yeah.
followed, yes.
And then, I guess the only other thing is at the November meeting, there'll be a visioning workshop, where the steering committee discusses what the vision statement should look like based off of the, inventory analysis that this current conditions are and the issues that we've heard so far from the public. We'll have the survey results mostly completed at that point, and kind of pulling themes out to what should be included in the vision statement. And so they'll have a workshop on that in November.
I admit to not having read the document yet, but the consultants, you know, they go through all the data collection analysis, whatever. Do they take that and then identify problems per se? Or they just say, here's all this stuff?
So the inventory analysis is really just kind of, here's all this stuff.
Right.
I mean, they do touch on issues that they have heard in some of the chapters, or in the topics that will be
So
in
for example,
chapters.
if they look at vacancy rates or something like that, do they say, oh gee, we need to, you know, based on this analysis, we need to have, you know, this many units of, you know, housing in this price range or anything like that?
I don't know if vacancy, because how census.
Well,
defines-
whatever, maybe
right,
something like
But
that,
yeah,
right?
they can connect, they're connecting dots like that, but that's also what they hear from the public, so like this.
Right,
the,
right, no, I get that,
subcommittee
but I'm talking
groups.
about what they get from the data.
Yes.
That they
yeah.
have.
They're using all of it.
They're using all of it,
Yeah.
and they're saying, and here are the problems that emerge from this analysis.
Yeah, I won't know if they'd call it a problem, but they would say, here are things the community wants us to look at. There may be
Opportunities.
problems, but where someone sees a
But-
problem.
But you're
They're
kind
all
of avoiding it,
opportunities.
you know, there may be problems
Opportunities.
out there that citizens don't identify, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know if they call it a problem. They're.
Okay, issues, whatever
Here
you'd
is
like
the
to
things
call
that the
it.
city may want to
Opportunities,
address.
there you go.
That's his term.
Yeah.
He is a politician. Do they do that?
Yes,
Okay.
but you will hear that in the themes from the visioning workshop.
I'm sorry, say again?
You will hear most of that when it comes to the visioning workshop and then the policy recommendations portion.
I understand what the vision is.
I'm just letting you know that it's
Okay.
not necessarily in the inventory and analysis, it's gonna come up later. down the line. Does that answer your question?
Perhaps.
For-
We'll see how that actually manifests itself in a written report that is on my computer even as we speak.
Well, said, it might not be in that report specifically, but later down the line, you will get a report where it will be included.
Okay,
Be prepared.
I'm prepared.
All right.
And when's the meeting, the next steering committee meeting?
October, fourth Monday in October, which might be 30th, but let me check.
It's the 27th.
I'm gonna use my phone real quick. I'm
You're not allowed to do
I'm
that.
not discussing
I was
anything.
gonna say,
with
wait a
anybody.
minute.
I'm looking at.
What
the
are you
dates.
looking at?
It's
Go
gonna
to the
be,
record.
Do as I say, don't
On the
do as I do.
record.
Seriously?
it's October 23rd.
23rd?
Lori said that 20 seconds ago.
She's always ahead of me,
Oh,
so.
my, okay.
Well, it's the day I'm having a Board of Appeals meeting, so you have to do it in that.
We're in the auditorium.
So that means I better get going.
I gave you a month.
Well,
Busy month.
part of that time is gone now.
Busy month.
Yeah,
And I did nothing.
that's fair. That's what I would have done in law school.
And that's why you're practicing as a planner, right?
And that's not why.
Okay.
And what is the countdown clock at?
Oh, 7 months and 13 days.
Do you want to give them an update on, yeah, that?
Yep, we're looking to hire somebody for my position. As soon as we've interviewed 3 people, and I've got a couple more to do. And once we make the decision, we'd like to have them start as soon as possible, so I can work with them. Yeah. And the same with Bobby's position. Yeah, we're-
Do the candidates look reasonably well-prepared to do this job?
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I think it has a lot to do with attitude too, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
A lot to do with attitude.
Well, I think it's
Personality.
very important.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So we'll have, Lori will do her best, but we'll have fresh code officers to train too along the way.
Yes. And a new computer system, so it's a lot to learn in a short amount of time, and I want them to be certified prior to me leaving.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Thank you.